and live streaming it as well on Exeter TV. So thank you to Bob Glowacki and his team for making us all hip and on TV and stuff this morning. So it'll be a really great session and good information for the broader community to have. So we're really appreciative to them for working with us on that. So thank you everyone for joining us for our very first State of the Region. We're very excited to have you all here today. We hope this will be an informative and interactive morning with our presenters. We've got 6 great presenters today that will be presenting on workforce, real estate, and healthcare/telehealth. So we're really excited. I think we've got some of the best in the business talking about these topics today. So we're really excited to have them. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Obviously, you know the drill. If you're not speaking, please mute yourself so we can hear the speakers clearly as they're presenting today. Also, we're going to do something a little bit different with the Q&A portion of the program. We're going to use breakout rooms for the presenters. So it'll be smaller groups that you'll be meeting with to have a little bit more intimate and robust conversations with our speakers. There will be 3 rounds of that. You'll get 10 minutes each, and we'll be putting the speakers in different breakout rooms. And hopefully when we rotate you around, you'll be able to get some special time with our presenters once that wraps up. And then we'll close out the program once we get through those 3 10-minute rounds. I'd also like to extend a thank you to our wonderful sponsors who have supported us on this journey for our new program. Thank you to our gold level sponsor, St. Mary's Bank. We have Mary Sullivan on the call today. Thank you very much, Mary, to you and your team. And a thank you to our silver sponsor, Northeast Credit Union, Wendy Bluen and her team. Thank you very much for supporting us on this journey as well. And of course, our series-long sponsor, Exeter Hospital, is such a good support of any type of educational programming that we do. So thank you to Exeter Hospital as well for being our series-long sponsor for any of our educational programming such as this. And last but not least, I would be remiss if I did not thank the wonderful chamber staff along with myself. They really helped pull this program together with organizations, talking out ideas, figuring out the best way to present this topic with all of our speakers here today. So thank you to Bobby and Jen for being such a great team, great support system, and pulling this event together. Couldn't do it without you guys. So with that, we're going to jump into our presentations, and we're going to start with the workforce. We're so pleased to have Sean Clancy. He's the Assistant Vice President of Marketing and Business Engagement for Great Bay Community College. We also have Lynn Zemansky on as well, who's the Director of Workforce Development at Great Bay Community College. And all of our presenter bios are in the chat. I did put a link in there so you can learn a little bit more about all of these wonderful presenters today. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sean and Lynn to start your 15-minute presentation. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Welcome, everybody. So if you'll just indulge me, I know we're here to talk about workforce development. But really at the community college system, and at Great Bay specifically, all the things we do really impact our workforce here in the region. So whether it's short-term programs as short as 24 weeks, all the way up to a 2-year associate's degree, everything we do here is about preparing our students to enter the workforce. And I'm sure you've all seen the headlines about college enrollments being down pretty much across the country. And just to let you know, specifically, community colleges across the country have been hit the hardest. And I just want to talk about that for a minute. It's rather germane to our conversation about workforce development. But basically, our students that come here to go directly to a career, they've been obviously impacted from an economic standpoint and really from a social standpoint. So they're really having a shortage of both, I'll say, finances and time to pursue their education. And so we're feeling that here in New Hampshire. We're certainly feeling that at Great Bay, but across the region here, where our enrollments are down, and that's a real major issue. It prevents people from getting into the workforce, and it also kind of limits what we can do to help people move forward with their education. But just to give you an idea of what goes on here at Great Bay, we do have programs such as in our technical programs that really are specific to go right to career. Those programs are full, whether it's nursing or welding or even motorcycle repair. It's those other programs that are a little bit more general, maybe put folks on a track to transfer to a 4-year school where our enrollment is down. And that just to kind of give you a backdrop from an educational standpoint, it's a pretty big impact here in our region, having both Great Bay and UNH within the area, right? But to pivot to workforce development, the other thing I wanted to mention is the average age of our student at Great Bay is in the mid-20s, 25 or 26. So in addition to our traditional high school graduates that come through Great Bay, a lot of our students are working adults. And so you all know that that can be a challenge when you're working and you have family issues and now you have economic disruption. So we're all feeling these things. We all know the headlines, but just to kind of put it in perspective for you in the role that we play and how we've been impacted by what's going on. And these are some of the trends we're seeing. We're hoping that things will turn around and people can find the time and resources to restart their educational career, their education to move into careers. But like everyone on the call, there's an awful lot of unknowns. So I'll take a minute and just pivot to workforce development. We work with business and industry and community organizations on short-term training in addition to the college degrees that we provide. And you might imagine that the folks we work with there, whether they are sponsored by their company or whether they're coming to us to get more skills, that average age is even higher than our average students. And one of the things we're seeing as a trend is previous to the COVID impact, as you all know, there was very low unemployment, specifically on the seacoast, but throughout New Hampshire. And so there were too many positions for not enough qualified applicants. The language we use in the community college system is the skills gap, and maybe you've heard of that. But closing that skills gap was a challenge for employers pre-COVID. And what we're seeing now as people have started to emerge from the disruption, our corporate clients, if you will, started to call us in the summertime and wanted to restart some of their programs and some of their training efforts that they had in place with us. And what we're seeing now is, as the unemployment rate drops, employers are back in that same situation of too many positions and not enough qualified employees or potential employees. So what we're seeing is a larger demand for the workforce development efforts that we provide here at Great Bay. And it really depends on, is there time and resources for people to enter into programs? Do people have the ability to change careers, which many of you know, normally requires either acquiring new skills or brushing off old skills or really changing things completely. And again, the social disruption that we're seeing, and we see that with our K through 12 partners trying to get kids back to school, really has an impact on the economy. So that's a trend we're seeing. You hear about it, and I just wanted to make it a little more granular for what we're seeing really right outside of our doors. So what we see ahead for the region is really a healthy skills gap. You don't hear that too often, but the skills gap has gotten through COVID, and I believe it's as strong as ever. And as New Hampshire businesses and organizations continue to grow or strive to grow, that skills gap is going to come back and be a problem. So the question is, what can you do to combat this? What are the opportunities? And there are a few ways. There's some things that Lynn will share with you of organizations and companies we're working with. So I'll turn it over to Lynn to talk about those specifics.
John, in the Business and Training Center, today I want to talk about 3 different programs that we offer. The first is short-term professional development, sort of our open enrollment program. And before COVID, we were seeing very low enrollment in these classes. And our thought was that everybody was busy, everybody was working, everybody was feeling secure with their jobs and did not see a need for upskilling. And currently, we're still seeing low enrollment in our professional development courses, but the reasons are very different. We're hearing from people that there's just too much uncertainty. Over the summer, people didn't know if their child was going to be in school. There's obviously financial insecurity. We're seeing that a lot of people working, especially in healthcare and manufacturing, are working a lot of overtime and just don't have the bandwidth to take to take a class. So we're also very cognizant that a lot of the workforce impacted by COVID is in the hospitality and tourism industries. And as a community college, we want to provide support to the industry, while at the same time we want to help people that are in those jobs that are exposed economically so they can have careers that are just more economically resilient. And to do that, we want to start offering what we're calling 21st century foundational skills. And those skills are in 3 buckets. So there's the human skills, which include critical thinking, creativity, and communication. There's digital building block skills, so analyzing data, working with data, software development, digital security and privacy. And finally, business enabling skills. These skills allow all the other skills to be put to work. Skills like project management, communicating data, and digital design. Over in our corporate training programs, which is kind of a misnomer because most of our companies we work with are small businesses. Most of the training that we had offered in the spring was postponed, but those companies have come back to us this fall. And the reasons that Sean mentioned that companies come to work with us are twofold. They can't find skilled employees, so they hire based on motivation and fit, and then train them for the skills. And for that situation, we offer a boot camp model, which is a full-time, very intense, short-term duration training to get people from learning to work very quickly. And then we're also seeing companies train their employees for overall organizational improvement to create higher functioning organizations and to help advance careers of their employees. We're working with a distribution company in Seabrook that's offering English as a second language classes to their warehouse workers who mostly speak Spanish. It's a 2-hour class. The first half of the class is paid for by the company. It's on company time. And the second hour is on employee time. This is a very competitive program. The company only puts their best workers into the program. And as a result, productivity and safety has improved because people are working harder to get into the class. Another example is a social services agency that we're offering 2 tracks of training for their employees. Well, one is for the frontline direct care employees, and the other is for their managers. And while they're trained separately, the goal is for the groups to function better together and to raise employee satisfaction. So social service organizations typically see high turnover, and this is a way for the organization to invest in their people and hopefully improve retention. The last program I want to talk about is apprenticeship. A few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, the state received a grant to expand federally registered apprenticeships. Not just in the traditional trades, but into manufacturing, IT, healthcare, and construction. An apprenticeship has really become a core offering at the Business and Training Center. There are 5 components to apprenticeship. It's employer-driven, so all the apprentices are employees. There's structured on-the-job training. There's classroom training. There's a progressive wage scale during the program, and at completion, the apprentices receive a national industry certificate. So we provide the classroom component, and we're seeing companies use apprenticeship, again, to build the employee they need. So they're hiring, again, for fit or motivation, and investing in them with these apprenticeship programs. It's a big investment for a company to invest in apprenticeship. However, we're getting data back nationally, especially in the manufacturing sector, that says for every dollar a company invests in apprenticeship, they're getting $1.50 in return in productivity and in product quality. So we were scheduled to have 2 apprenticeship cohorts start actually this month that had to be postponed due to COVID. One company was having trouble hiring, and they attributed that to the unemployment benefits that folks were getting. And then the second company was just having a lot of illnesses in the company. So a lot of folks were having to work overtime to compensate, and they just weren't able to accommodate training at that time. So these are just 3 of the programs that we do to really support our local companies in the area. And really our communication and connection with companies is really imperative for the success of these programs. Sean.
Great, thank you. Oh, Sean, did you want to have a final word before we move on?
Nope, that's great. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you to Sean again and Lynn for that quick but robust rundown of workforce. We all know that's a huge topic always, regardless of pandemic or not. So we really appreciate you breaking it down for us. And hopefully there'll be some really great questions for you guys in the breakout room. So thank you. Next, we're going to move on to real estate. We all know that's one industry that has not slowed down during this pandemic, and we're so excited to have Josh Levy, who is the co-founding principal of Waterstone Properties Group. You know that is Brickyard Square in Epping and also Granite Ridge in Rochester. So they've done some really great things here in the state of New Hampshire, and Josh will be talking a little bit about the commercial real estate side of things. We're also very excited to have Mary Strathern, who's a realtor associate broker for the Gove Group here in Stratham. So thank you both. And who wants to kick us off for real estate?
Okay, I will. Josh, you want to go first?
Sure. Thanks for having us, and really excited to learn from you today too. And Sean and Lynn, we're very familiar with your guys' work. Please keep it up. It's great for the state and the closing the skills gap and helping recruit and retain these businesses and states. So thanks for sharing all of that, and look forward to the breakout session. As Kim mentioned, my name is Josh Levy from Waterstone Properties Group. We're based down in Needham, Mass, with an office in Portsmouth, Westbrook, Maine, and the Carolinas as well. And we really focus on retail shopping centers, mixed use, healthcare development, and logistics. And put together some slides today. And there we go. That's it. Any questions? No. So on the second page is it looks depressing. And look, COVID's been horrible, right? For all of us personally, family-wise, business-wise. So let's not dwell on this. I apologize for having that be the first stat. And it's not going to be a negative presentation, I promise. I wanted to talk about pre-COVID and post-COVID as the framework, and then apply that to medical real estate, retail real estate, and then talk at the end on a positive note about where we're seeing the opportunities. And I'm sure, as Mary's going to get into too, I totally do not agree with that first statistic. I think that's also because this incorporates a lot of the urban core slowdown around the U.S. And I think in markets like New Hampshire, that's incredibly stronger and positive. So let's get into the fun stuff. I'd say on the medical side, and I won't talk too much about it because I know Deb and Chris, you guys are touching on healthcare next, but could we go to the next slide, please? Or am I able to? Oh, great. Thank you. One of the things that we were seeing pre-COVID and is certainly continuing is, with an aging population in the U.S., especially in New England and certainly New Hampshire as well, and people have greater access to insurance than ever before in the history of our country. So we're just continuing to see utilization rates increase. And it's slowing down briefly with COVID, primarily because hospitals have had to focus on the pandemic, obviously, but also so many people have had to cancel, or the hospitals have stopped a lot of the profitable elective procedures and surgeries. We think that's temporary, and hospitals have shown great resilience and innovation in combating that. But the trend has been to see we're really not seeing many new hospitals being built. We're working on some replacement hospitals, sale leasebacks of current facilities, adding MOBs or medical office buildings to their campuses, or replacing an older surgical platform and perioperative suite, but not many new hospitals being built. Where the expansion, and we think the opportunity really has been and will continue to be post-COVID, is in outpatient ambulatory centers. That could be medical office buildings. Joe, you said you just moved from Somerville. That's where Partners moved 3,000 employees over to Assembly Row. I think that was an 800,000 square foot medical office building. We saw Maine Med just did that recently in Portland, Maine. They moved 600 IT jobs out of the hospital. But accounting, IT, human resources, real estate, you can easily move those off campus and retrofit that space to more profitable acute care facilities. And that leads to the opportunity for outpatient, for medical office buildings rather. And we're also seeing it's a lot cheaper for the hospitals to treat you closer to where you live. And that's really a win-win. It's more convenient. With the changes in the insurance landscape, we have more and more control over our deductible. So if you weren't worried about paying for it, you wouldn't think as much about the cost of an MRI. But with a $3,000 deductible, and you can get an MRI for $500 in our Seabrook facility, and that same MRI may cost $2,500 inside the hospital. It's really a great service to provide that. Plus, you can put that in a highly amenitized retail or mixed-use environment that the patient and the caregiver wants to be in. So we're continuing to see that grow, and I think that will continue post-COVID, certainly. And I won't touch on telemedicine. I know we're going to get into that. This is a project in the bottom right we're building, by the way, and up at Rock Row in Westbrook in Portland, Maine. But really, again, just dwelling on the segmentation of acute care, staying in the core campus, but treating the whole person with outpatient facilities, ambulatory surgery centers, and combining integrated health and treatment in one destination. And then in terms of the retail setting, we call this medical retail, but it's really just a fancy word for putting medical inside the retail space. But you see Beth Israel do it, you see Partners do it. A lot of them are realizing that it's better for the patients and caregivers, as well as their physicians and staff, to be in a highly amenitized environment with a Starbucks next door and your supermarket and a restaurant for lunch, and maybe outdoor walking trails and heavily programmed environments. So we really see that continuing to be the way of the future. On the next slide is, we're doing a few healthcare projects right now, and it's great timing coming out of COVID, hopefully, to think about how we do this and deliver healthcare in a post-COVID environment. So some very low-hanging fruit strategies are ones that we're seeing everywhere, like touchless sensors, right, and reader boards. But then you get into, we're looking at putting UV light into the ductwork of the HVAC to kill any bacteria or infections in the air. Higher rate of change and higher quality HEPA filtration, et cetera. So, larger waiting rooms, separating inpatient and outpatient, really focusing on post-COVID strategies for that, and happy to talk about that more. In terms of retail, it was interesting. Pre-COVID, we were seeing nationally an increase of 20% year over year in the foot traffic to outdoor shopping centers, and an annual 10% decline to the foot traffic inside of malls, enclosed malls. Enclosed malls have continued to just get absolutely decimated, as we could all imagine. And even the shopping centers are down negative 24% for foot traffic, although New Hampshire has been pretty resilient. And I'd say most of our properties have been 60% open even throughout the pandemic, which has been great. But I think there's some trends overall where people were starting to leave the enclosed mall environment. They can do the same sales volume or more in an open air environment. And I think that's only going to increase. There are about 1,200 malls left in the United States. They're now predicting at least a quarter of them are going to close in the next 5 years. That was a trend that was long happening, I think, since the 80s and 90s with the demise of JCPenney, Sears, Kmart, et cetera. But I think this is just going to continue to accelerate that. Pre-COVID, we were seeing about 9 to 10% of shopping occur online with e-commerce, and that's certainly increased dramatically. And I think that'll be here to stay as well. On the next slide, I promise I won't go to negative town. Last year, 2019, we saw 17 major retailers go bankrupt. 17. As of this month, I think we're at 27. And they're predicting we may surpass 2010, which saw 42 or 44 coming out of the 08-09 crisis. Last year, there were about 9,500 retail store closures. As of today, there are about 8,000. I think we'll surpass that. Although coming into the holiday season, a lot of people on the brink may try to get the holiday sales, and then we may see the shakeout in January, February. There are some great success stories like Paper Store, who went in and out of bankruptcy in 42 days and did a great job and are back. And I think stronger because of it. And there are a lot of opportunities in this as well. So I don't think it's all negative. But the way we've adopted this trends locally is just to see what can we do to support our tenants. We have 16 properties in New Hampshire. We've been doing business here for the last 18 years and are really vested in the communities that we do business. And at the bottom are some outdoor movie nights we did for O'Neill Cinemas in Epping, and they've hosted those in Rochester. Picnic tables outside of different restaurants, quick pickup lanes for car service and curbside. So we wanted to be able to adapt really quickly where we can in the built environment. And most towns and cities have been great to work with only a few exceptions where they've been very nimble and responsive to their local businesses as well. We've also, that doesn't look very COVID safe, but we've really worked hard to have other events, safe outdoor events, make sure we promote the tenants that are open, work on certain fundraising events as well, and really promoting things on social media. On the next page is hosted some outdoor concerts at our music venue. In the top right, we've done outdoor graduations for different communities. Brought some of the fitness tenants who have really, unfortunately, gotten crushed during the pandemic, brought a lot of that to the outside experience, during the summer to be able to do that, outdoor yoga in the park. So this was always a trend, doing outdoor events and programming for the community. And I think that's only going to continue as people yearn for social interaction and to get outside and to do something. We just need to do that in a safe way. Absolutely amazing how groceries and home improvement have performed. I would add to that other necessity retail, New Hampshire Liquor and Wine Outlet, who we do a lot of partnerships with, have done very well. I'd say the hardest hit are really the restaurants and fitness and entertainment, including movie theaters. What we think we'll see are, as these numbers improve, continue to see a trend towards these outdoor mixed-use properties, even more outdoor spaces. We need continued flexibility with local regulations to have outdoor seating, drive-through lanes, curbside pickup, temporary pop-up events. So a lot of that requires cities or towns being a little bit more relaxed in some of the regulations. Still very experiential. We just think it will look different now. And certainly seamless pickup and drop off, and incorporating with restaurants the ability for Uber Eats or Foodler or Grubhub food delivery services to come through. Promise I'd end on a bright note. Where we really see the opportunities right now are sale leaseback transactions, primarily with manufacturing and logistics companies. Some are credit challenged and we have to be careful. Others are just very strong balance sheets, however, have gotten a pinch because of inventory and the purchasing side right now. And so they find themselves looking to get out of the real estate business, don't really want to own their own facilities, and would prefer to raise the capital quickly on the private market and be able to reinvest that into expansion or getting through COVID. Logistics, which is just another word for industrial, has always been really hot leading up to the COVID crisis, but even more so now. We're seeing Amazon pay some incredibly high rents in the urban areas to get that last mile delivery. Every single supermarket we talk to is expanding like crazy. As we saw a 15% increase in New Hampshire right there, but it's really an incredible time for supermarkets, and whoever you talk to, they're really picking their head up and looking to grow. And I think that provides a lot of opportunities. The glass is half full side of all of the bankruptcies is that there are going to be a lot of opportunities for cheap existing space if you're looking to grow, and there are people that are, and I think that's a great opportunity. I'll leave multifamily. Mary has a great presentation on that, but we're seeing a huge amount of demand in secondary and tertiary markets for large scale multifamily development projects. We think medical will continue to grow, and we've started development on some large scale mixed use projects because we really want to be in the position to capture the demand 2, 3, 4 years from now when they open. We think that will be back, and the exodus from the malls will continue, and people will be looking for exactly that kind of product. But that's kind of how we're seeing things right now, and look forward to any questions.
Thanks, Josh.
Yep, now we turn over to Mary. Thank you, Mary.
It's really interesting to me that we're both in real estate and our lives are so vastly different as far as activity and things that are going on locally. But residential real estate just really has taken off over the past few months. So I'm going to start here with some national trends. Just in the past 10 years, we've had a 61% increase to reach an average of $295,000 as far as a median home price. But basically, we had about a month that we were off. Everything was down. Homes weren't being shown. People were scared to enter into the market. And then since probably mid-spring, it's taken off and it hasn't stopped. And I'm sure you all have experienced it in some fashion or another. I know Joe moved here recently, so he was probably in the midst of that. Consumer trends show a desire for larger homes in the suburbs. I think that's a little misleading. I think what it is city people are trying to move out, not necessarily large homes, but just larger than what they're living in. They're also looking to move it, into smaller towns, something like in Exeter. We're seeing a lot of that. Mortgage rates across the board have been great, and they're expected to stay steady for the next 12 to 18 months, we're hoping. And that's had a great impact on the activity in the market. And then, which most of us are doing it right now, working from home, that seems to be a growing part of the nation's workplace culture, just trying to figure out how to make it work. Some are working remotely 100%. Others are transitioning back, and we're trying to work with folks on workspaces within their homes to take advantage of that. Is that Jen? Thanks. Regionally, Northeast, our existing home sales have jumped 13.8%, and that's a 5.7% increase from last year. So if you've been keeping track of the market at all, you're probably hearing we're having a mass exodus from cities like Boston, and they're entering into southern New Hampshire, and we hear a lot are moving to Maine. Median price is up almost over 10% from last year. And again, we're having an influx. Boston, New York, Connecticut, the mid-Atlantic states, moving out of the cities, looking for a more lifestyle. Many are realizing that the benefits of small cities, and they're enjoying what a town like Exeter has, and looking to, I guess, in talking with the Seacoast president a couple of days ago, just in general, what's going on, he said it seems to be Portsmouth and Exeter are kind of the two hot towns Dover's also in the running. People moving from cities don't want to automatically end up in a majorly rural area, so they want some type of downtown area. So that's the draw for a town like Exeter. And again, historically low inventory right now. So fewest available units ever. Right now, we're just way down in inventory, but yet our sales are way up. So basically, nothing to buy, way more buyers than there are homes. Which is really amazing. Home prices set an all-time high in September of 615,000. That's the third time in the past 4 months. We actually hit a record in the month of August for the Seacoast for having the most $1 million sales in the history of the Seacoast area. So things are really up. And so the two counties locally here that we, work with the most, Stratford and Rockingham, home sales fell. Basically just not enough to buy. Our pending sales are up. And then we also have a big need for land, not only builders, but also folks wanting to build. And not only wanting to build necessarily single family homes, I've seen a lot of multi-generational type folks that are looking to maybe have, someone my age, mid 50s, living in the big home, having maybe an in-law for grandma, and then having a separate unit for their kids. I think a lot of the pandemic has made people rethink maybe pulling their parents out of some type of assisted living so they can see them all the time. Their kids that maybe live in California, not being able to access transportation easily or feeling comfortable traveling cross country. So they're all kind of merging into this area. It's really interesting. I probably have 4 or 5 folks right now that are looking for this exact thing, either something that's already built, something that they can retrofit, or a piece of land that can allow that. And they're willing to wait, because in their minds, they all want to be together. And maybe some of it's financial too. Again, record low inventory. So it's just getting really tricky. I saw a really funny thing on Facebook not too long ago where it had 2 photos, and it had the realtor that is the buyer's agent, and it had the realtor that's the listing agent. The buyer's agent, finger looked like it looked like their hair was sticking straight out, stressed out of their gourd, and then there's the listing agent that looks all perfect and ready to go. And it's really just, if you have listings in this market, you're all set. And I can kind of get into that in our group talks as far as what's going on with that. But just really tough market for buyers right now to try and find a house quickly. So moving on, as far as the Seacoast, we're just having a huge influx of cash buyers, not just local cash buyers. They're coming from, the cities. They're coming from the West Coast. They're viewing homes without or watching videos and purchasing home based on videos. And I'm talking multi-million-dollar homes. And not only, they're paying cash, they're wanting to close quickly. They're all in. It's really, really interesting. But what that's doing is bumping out just the traditional buyer, the conventional buyer, buyers that are VA or FHA government type loans. Those buyers are really, really having a hard time, and they're ending up in the more rural areas where it's less competitive. Multiple offers are becoming more and more common. I've heard the statistic of an average of 3 offers nationwide on properties. I'd say in this area, a low of 3. I've seen upwards of 50 offers on one property, which is really crazy. Buyers are starting to look in Rockingham County, but oftentimes are finding, due to the competition, the pricing, and lack of inventory, they're moving further north or further west. Fast-paced competitive market is making it more difficult for the first-time home buyers. I'm working with quite a few myself. It's really frustrating. You have to, I think experience helps as a realtor, kind of talking them off the cliff, because a lot of times it's ending up they're having to put anywhere from 3 or 6 different properties they need to put offers in order to secure something. And that may take months. So if you're in a tight time frame as far as a lease that's coming up, it's really very, very tricky right now. Investing, which Josh had touched on, multifamily purchases are way up. Second homes, people want homes that have multi-uses. They want to enjoy them for part of the year. They want to be able to rent them out. So at times, they have to do the research because more and more some condo associations are becoming more restrictive. So some folks want to jump in and buy a condo locally and then try and Airbnb it. And there's a lot of newly written rules and covenants and association docs that are restricting that. So as a buyer's agent, you really need to do your research. There are a lot of folks with a lot of money just looking to jump into the being flippers or buying multifamilies. They're not always very experienced. So that is also very competitive. And what they're finding is flippers are doing pretty well. If they can get in and buy something somewhat at market value, they figure in the next 6 to 12 months, they're making money pretty quickly, more so than they were a few years back. So new construction. It can be right now almost as efficient as buying a resale. And the reason I say that is it is taking many buyers multiple offers in order to secure a home. It's very frustrating and you almost feel like you're not in control as a buyer in this market. So new construction's beneficial in that you can go to an actual job site, pick a lot, work with a builder directly and know your exact timeline. You feel a little bit more in control, but the wait time is long. We're quoting in our office right now about 9 to 12 months for a new construction build. We're working really diligently to find more land. It's our builders within our office are moving further north and further west where there's more open land. As a result, home builder confidence is increasing. So basically we're off the chart as far as new construction sales, and everything's selling out. Anything standing, any standing specs are gone. It's just getting to be really tricky that way. But there are some newer developments where there's lots available. So if people kind of like that they can pick something and know that they're all set. The challenge is we don't really have any spec homes right now. Those are even being sold. There's a lack of land to purchase on the Seacoast. That's been an ongoing issue for a number of years. And the building costs are going up, which I know that's probably going to get touched on in some of the talks today. But that lumber's going way up. Transportation's up, everything, shortage of people. There's not enough workers to do the plumbing, the electrical work. All the different contractors are having difficulty in that area. So if they have an established team, they're doing well. If they're new in this area, they're really having a tricky time finding help, and that's delaying some construction. And then what is happening during the pandemic? So it's kind of weird if you get out there and you're looking at houses. It's not as free and open as it used to be. It's actually evolved a lot. I know there was about 4 to 6 weeks where we really held off on all showings. It was very, very limited. And then there was a period of time when the state board said, okay, you can open up and have open houses again. Well, that's kind of tricky during a pandemic if you think about it. But I just remember myself personally finding out that we were allowed to have open houses again. So I went ahead and scheduled one, didn't give it probably as much thought as I should have. And because we were shut down for about 4 to 6 weeks, I really hadn't been to a situation where there were a high volume of people at any property because people were holding back at that time. So the very first weekend that I had an open house, I posted it, drove down the road, planned on being there about 20 minutes before the open house started. And as I came up over the hill, heading towards the house, I saw cars as far as I could see. I'm approaching the house and I see no less than 100 people in the front lawn of this property.
Wow.
And I really practically had a panic attack. I was laughing and crying at the same time, thinking, okay, what did I get myself into? Now, of course, I had gloves, I had booties, I had masks, but I wasn't prepared for 100 people. So that was the big shift. And since that time, and that was probably May-ish, since then it hasn't stopped, but now it's a little more controlled. We do scheduled appointments. We're doing a lot of video showings. So if you have folks from out of state, you're going in, you're doing videos. And again, they're buying sight unseen because what happens is properties are going on midweek, some type of open house event on the weekend, and they're under contract within 3 to 5 days if they're priced properly. So if you're out of state, you're really going to have a hard time in this market. So you really need somebody that's able to actively work for you on your behalf locally. Interesting enough, well, you probably won't find it that interesting, but resale, people that are staying in their homes, 76% have been carrying out home improvement projects since the pandemic started. So not only is there the pressure on the new construction contractors, but also the contractors, working on resale homes, they're just off the charts as far as being busy. I know most of my clients are about 2 to 3 years out as far as getting projects done. And I see people post, things all the time on Facebook as far as, need help with a bathroom project, basement finishing, that type of thing. You're going to be waiting a long time in this market. Most requested home updates, because everyone's staying in their houses, they want to enjoy them. So not surprisingly, kitchen updates, bathroom updates, additional workspaces. People are also looking into the future, trying to make their home work for them long term. So there is some aging in place where people want to stay. So they're looking to convert first floor spaces to master bedrooms and baths, so they don't have to think about moving in the future. So that's happening a lot. And that's happening in new construction too. So looking forward, I think we're going to continue to see an influx of buyers from the cities in the Northeast and also the Mid-Atlantic states. I believe all indicators are showing that the interest rates will be holding. I think we'll have a continued shortage of inventory. We're entering into a period of time where typically there are less listings, winter, holidays and such. But I think anyone that does decide to list their home right now are going to do really well. The problem is a lot of folks are holding tight because if they are going to pick up and move, where are they going? So it's just a domino effect and it's getting super tricky. Again, shortage of inventory, and there's a continued lack of rental inventory. That's been an ongoing problem for a number of years on the Seacoast, but it's definitely a problem now. And first-time home buyers, super tough for them. They really need a lot of support to try and figure out how to navigate this market. I will give them some credit, though. A lot of them are just persistent. They're really focused and they're all in. It's just trying to figure out where they're going. A lot of them are starting in Rockingham County, and I'm heading west of Manchester, north of Barrington, the Lakes region. I mean, they're really expanding their territory because it is so competitive here. And again, as far as Exeter and the surrounding towns, this area is as desirable as ever. This is what a lot of people are looking for. So that's it. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Josh and Mary. That was a great lot of information. Obviously, everything's going to be a lot of information. I'm just repeating myself, but thank you both very much for breaking it down for us and giving us a good synopsis of how the region is doing. Finally, today we have our healthcare and telehealth discussion. We're so pleased to have Deborah Fournier, who's a senior associate at UNH Health Law and Policy and Institute for Health Policy and Practice. Welcome, Deborah. And we also have Chris Wheeler, who's a physician assistant at Access Sports Medicine and Orthopedics. So Deb, I'm going to have you kick off this discussion.
Great, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, okay, so I'm doing telehealth in New Hampshire, and certainly during a pandemic, health and healthcare are critical issues everywhere. And as Josh mentioned, we could certainly talk about the trend toward outpatient care or hospital and health system consolidation, the future of the Affordable Care Act. But we're going to pick from that the focus on telehealth. And I have 10 minutes, and then I'm going to hand it over to my presentation partner, Chris Wheeler, who is a healthcare provider. I'm just the nerd who talks about health policy. And he's going to talk about what it's like on the ground. So next slide. So really quickly, telehealth is the use of a variety of different telecommunication technologies to support long-distance clinical healthcare. And traditionally, this has been a very niche, small modality of providing service, and usually is considered a resource in hard to access areas, rural regions, or federal healthcare shortage designated areas where patients might have trouble finding providers. There have been a litany of limitations with this. Insurance coverage for telehealth was limited. Certain providers only could use it. They could only use it for patients with which they had established relationships. There were only certain services that could be reimbursed via telehealth. There was virtually no coverage for a phone call, for audio only contact with a provider as being a reimbursable service. And certainly, there was also issues with people couldn't take calls in their home and have that be a reimbursable event. They had to go to a healthcare setting in order for it to be a reimbursable event, which limited its applicability for many folks. And then, even though it is the 21st century, there are still rural regions in the United States where the absence of broadband persists. And as a result, it continues to be a barrier to telehealth, especially the more sophisticated technologies going forward. So enter COVID-19, and suddenly you have a healthcare system that is confronting almost unimaginable and countervailing forces. The healthcare system needs to be everywhere all the time because a rarely or limited use modality into a vital public health tool. There has been recent federal legislation in the spring that was enacted to address COVID-19. There were 3 distinct packages, and essentially, I won't bore you with their chapter. And this slide here well, not all of the ways, the dominant ways in which Medicare changed its rules to allow telehealth visits to occur. Probably the most important ones are the left 3 bullets. You don't have to be in any particular place. You don't have to be any particular type of patient. And you can have services delivered audio only, so by phone, So if you don't have a smartphone that allows a fancy platform where you can video visit with your doctor, you can still get audio services. So meanwhile, while that was happening at the federal level, there aren't only Medicare patients in New Hampshire, there are also commercial and Medicaid patients in New Hampshire. Next slide, please. So New Hampshire governor issued an emergency order that essentially provided really broad flexibilities to provide telehealth services through those state regulated health plans, right? So those are small group and an individual market, commercial health insurance products, and Medicaid. And it largely mirrored the flexibilities in Medicare that had been provided. And then also, the State House went further and enacted legislation, House Bill 1623 this summer, that made permanent the vast majority, and I mean like 99% of the flexibilities that were in the governor's emergency order. And those flexibilities are here on this slide, slide number 4. So again, probably the biggest flexibilities are that these state regulated plans have to have reimbursement parity for telehealth services, meaning they can't pay less for telehealth service than they would for the in-person version of that visit. And they have to have coverage parity, which means if they provide the service in person, if they cover the service in person, then they have to cover the service via telehealth to the same extent. Again, audio only, as well as all of the other mixture of telecommunication, electronic media provided by medical providers is covered, so long as the service is medically necessary. And again, allows clients to be in their homes when they receive the telehealth visit, which expands the flexibility of that service dramatically. The other issues that tend to come up is that this can be a brand new patient relationship. You don't have to have an established face-to-face relationship with a patient in order to provide a telehealth service, including access to medication-assisted treatment, which is opioid treatment through medication, and those no face-to-face established relationship services also apply to mental health services. And anecdotally, we are hearing that behavioral health and mental health treatment occurring via telehealth continues apace, that perhaps medical only services are scaling back a little. Folks want to see their doctor wants to see them. Relationship is important. And there are a host of concerns, I'm sure, from providers about standard of care. What do they do if they only hear someone and don't see them when there's an indication that maybe they should be seen in person, but where does the provider's obligation end to ensure that person is seen in person? So there's a field day for lawyers that has to be evaluated. But all to say, all of this is currently available in New Hampshire. Next slide, please. I'm going to, I promise, wrap up the nerdy part really, really fast. So the things that people are wondering about right now are, is there ever going to be federal legislation enacted that would make those changes to Medicare permanent, the way that New Hampshire has made the state regulated changes permanent? And how do we maintain telehealth as a critical tool in our toolbox when it isn't the right modality for all services? It needs to be maintained where it's helpful. Again, the behavioral health, mental health, nutrition counseling, it seems to be a great hit in those spaces. But how do we maintain it for when we have, for example, additional surges of COVID-19, or there is, God forbid, additional future pandemics that render in-person services difficult, but we need to keep revenue going for our healthcare providers, and we need access to health services to remain available. We need data in order to find out about what our next steps should be. And we need data about how it's going in rural regions. Do we have sufficient connectivity here in New Hampshire? Is broadband available enough to make this meaningful for people in the North Country? What about vulnerable populations? And by that, I mean folks perhaps who don't have very high incomes, for whom a smartphone is not readily available. How is telehealth going for those folks? And how is it going among different populations? I have anecdotal evidence from my sample size of one father who says that he does not like to go to a telehealth visit because that's not really going to the doctor. He wants to be seen. And so what are we going to do about folks who need those services, but maybe are reluctant to avail themselves of them? And then, of course, the cost of delivery. If we are paying at parity for telehealth services, what is the actual cost, and does that need to be reexamined at any point in the future? So that is my blitzkrieg version of telehealth. I'm going to, I think, hand the mic back and over to my partner in crime, Chris Wheeler.
Okay, can you hear me all? Okay. So thanks everybody for letting me come in. I was going to speak, as Deb said, to on the ground telehealth, because interestingly enough, our practice started telehealth just as COVID-19 hit. In fact, we had a meeting with a telehealth company the week before COVID hit, and actually set up a program to initially, we saw a need for connecting with folks through other avenues, those that didn't want to come in for a post-op check, maybe who were doing fine and didn't want to come in. They might live in Manchester or live in the North Country and didn't want to come in. So we saw a need for an alternative way to get them seen. And of course, all plans went haywire once COVID hit, but it actually, in fact, helped our telehealth really get off the ground. And speaking to what Deb talked about, we did telehealth in sort of three different ways, I'm sorry. One way we utilized telehealth was in folks that were coming in for appointments. We would talk with them on the phone and do a COVID screen. So if they were comfortable coming in for an evaluation, we would go through, very similar to what most people are doing now before they go to be seen by a provider. We would have them, we would ask them the questions. Have they traveled in the last 14 days? Have they been exposed to anyone with known COVID-19 or fever? Have they shown any symptoms? And if they had not then we'd ask them further questions with a provider, reviewing their health history, going through a lot of the questions. Do they have COPD? Do they have risk factors that would let them come in for an appointment, or also let them be more apt for a telehealth appointment or a video appointment? So we would have folks that may have traveled or were feeling symptoms or weren't comfortable coming in for an in-person visit. We then offered a video telehealth appointment. And so I was doing a lot of, for April and May, doing a lot of telehealth appointments, both for new patients and for follow-up appointments. So a lot of follow-up appointments being ankle sprains that needed to be seen again. Post-op appointments, someone had a 6-week follow-up to their ACL but didn't feel comfortable coming in. People with high risk factors that needed to talk about follow-ups for their spine injuries or for MRI follow-ups that again didn't feel comfortable coming in. So we were doing a lot of those visits. And then we were also able to do physical therapy evaluations and treatments. So a lot of our post-operative patients would see their physical therapist one time a week and have check-ins and advance their exercise programs. there were some limitations because it is orthopedics being a very hands-on medical subspecialty. You know, you oftentimes need to lay your hands on a patient to be able to feel their knee, feel the ligamentous laxity, know where their pain is. But a lot of times we can do initial evaluations to point them in the right direction. Of course, we can't do x-rays through a telehealth visit, but we can certainly be able to assess, is there a sign of infection? Is there risk of, you know, should this wait? I had one patient who was up in the North Country and had a knee injury, but after seeing him and being able to evaluate his physical abilities, we were able to have him avoid coming in for a personal appointment because both his health history and his fear of COVID prevented that. So that really was how we were doing a lot of our telehealth through into April, May, and we've started to see some more people coming back in for appointments as high school sports have picked up. You know, people are getting injured, but we are seeing the need for telehealth. I think moving forward, doing some of the similar things that we had been doing, phone conversations with those folks. We still are doing phone screens on all of our patients, and those patients that answer yes to the risk factors, we are a provider is calling, and we're having a 5 to 10 minute conversation with the patient over their risk factors and their comfort as to whether they are coming in or to be evaluated. If they're not, then they're offered a video telehealth. I see it moving forward in post-op appointments or post-op checks or follow-up appointments for those patients who are doing much better, and just we need to sign off. We need to see them back 1 or 2 more times to make sure that they're progressing how we want to progress. And they really like the face-to-face interaction. And sometimes that can be done on a phone call, but we have some exam techniques and some ways that we can assess motor strength and do some of our physical exam findings that we can then help to progress them in their rehab or in their recovery. And then moving forward, I also see how we might be able to do more sort of preoperative education for those folks who are having surgery that have questions, that want to know more about their procedure, want to know what their postoperative protocols will be, how are they going to be able to rehab, when are they going back to work? So offering preoperative appointments that will then be able to have it done in their office, from their home, so they don't have to make another visit into our office or become or be uncomfortable coming in for another visit. So that's sort of where we're transitioning, and it'll be interesting to see how we're able to incorporate this into our practice as things continue to change, if we see a third peak as they're talking about.
All right, thank you, Chris and Deborah, for some great discussion there around telehealth. We know, again, these topics are huge, and we really appreciate you breaking them down into some key points for our registrants today to take away. So given where we are at for time, what we're going to do is we're going to do one breakout session. I'm sorry, we can't do 3. If you don't end up with the speakers that you were hoping to ask questions for, please do reach out to me via email, and I'm happy to make a virtual connection for you after this program. So what we're going to do is we're going to do one breakout room for 10 minutes. And you'll be able to have extend the conversation with the group that you end up in, whether it's workforce real estate or telehealth. And then we'll come back here after that 10-minute session, and we will wrap the program up and go on with our day. So Jen's going to do the magic behind the curtain and put us into breakout rooms, and we'll see you all in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Hey, buddy, what's up?
Hello there. How are you?
Here, good. How are you?
It's hard. I couldn't get my thing to work on the phone line as I call in, and I'm not technologically savvy like other people.
Even though you're doing telehealth.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
that feels weird.
Hi, Rachel.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you? I'm up in the lovely confines of Rochester, New Hampshire this morning. So.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we have an office up here, so I came up to see patients before, and then I'll see them after. So, actually, I have a telehealth appointment this afternoon.
Well, there you go.
Do you go up there often?
Once every other week, so not bad. Not bad.
Nice.
Mostly Exeter and the surgery center in Auburn. So.
Gotcha.
All right, we've got a bunch of folks.
Yeah.
Good.
Mercedes, Carol, Rebecca, Rachel, Bob.
Maybe I can look at it.
You
You
can
have
look
to
at
swipe.
Valerie. Yeah. So do
Okay, there we
folks
go.
have any questions they want to ask? I know we just raced through the most minimal version of that topic.
I do have a relatively quick question. Well, Chris knows what I do. I am the director of a volunteer driver program where we provide mobilized volunteers who provide rides for older residents and other adults with medical issues.
Yeah.
So telehealth has really impacted.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also impacted my ability to plan. How many. We expected a huge, when things began to reopen, and obviously I was very much down on my volunteer driver course since most of our volunteers have dared to live long enough to have active retirements. They were stepping back. I was expecting a real onslaught of people calling in to get those follow-up appointments that Chris was talking about. Luckily, that hasn't happened. It has been a very manageable increase in demand. So I'm trying to get an idea, Chris, your presentation on how Access, because we do have people we bring into Access, is handling telehealth was very interesting. You see this as something that is going to be happening going forward. And how do you think it's going to impact the people who are my age and older, okay, the older population?
Interestingly enough, I think I have some, I would say it's been really a mixed folks that I've seen, but I actually want to say that most of the people that I see telehealth wise are under the age of 65. They don't necessarily, some of the folks don't have the ability to have telehealth. As Deb was saying, they don't have a smartphone or they don't have a computer with a built-in camera. But I have to say, even during snowstorms and hurricanes, the hardy, healthy New Englanders always seem to want to come in for their appointments. So I would say during this COVID, even after sort of the shutdown during COVID, we've seen a lot more of our sort of over 65 patients wanting to come in and be seen.
Okay.
So I would say that it wouldn't necessarily affect in my practice,
Right.
wouldn't affect your position at all.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, we're still providing rides. The need is still here. It's not, transportation is a huge issue in the region. It's not going away. Just trying to figure out how to balance the volunteer pool with the need for rides. But thanks, that's actually really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And this is for Chris. Based on your experience, how would you categorize the level of comfortability that you have diagnosing or analyzing the quality of the telehealth sessions you have?
So the telehealth sessions that I have, I don't do a lot of new patients. I will do some new patients, and it's more so to get a feel as to whether I think they need an x-ray or not. It's very tough in orthopedics, as I said, because we really rely on our hands to, for example, feel an endpoint for a test, for a ligament test, to feel the strength in a shoulder for a rotator cuff tear. There are some things that I've been looking at telehealth-wise that we might be able to get a better idea. But a lot of the times we need to do x-rays or MRIs or other imaging. So from a new patient standpoint, I think that's where we're going to need to see it evolve. But really, from a follow-up standpoint, our telehealth program allows me to share MRI imaging. So I can review MRI images with a patient through telehealth. I can, if a patient has had surgery and they're concerned about an infection, I can assess, the redness. I can look for drainage. I can really get an idea. I can look at their range of motion without laying hands on them. And then a lot of the times it's talking. So we're talking through a procedure. We're talking through how they're doing. We're talking through what they're to expect. So they do like the face-to-face through the telehealth rather than doing it over the phone. And then I can also use anatomic diagrams, anatomic models to really describe what we're going to be doing. So I would say one of the limitations, at least in orthopedics, is the initial evaluation. But for follow-ups, MRI follow-ups, surgical follow-ups, and for preoperative talks and assessments, that's where I really see that it's beneficial.
Thank you.
I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Chris, you said that you're looking at other things, and I might have missed it in what you just said, but what are the enhancements that are coming?
Well, there I think more so how can we as providers do effective physical exams for patients that don't want to come in but have an orthopedic injury. So there, really COVID-19, I think the Mayo Clinic has a course for us to look more closely at physical exam techniques that we can incorporate into telehealth to get a better idea for diagnosis for those patients that don't want to be seen.
I have a question for, I'm sorry. I have a question for Deborah.
Yeah.
Do you foresee any litigation issues in the future of the telehealth mode?
Well, I'm a lawyer, so I'm going to say yes, because, that's how that goes. I think there are, like, as I said, concerns and questions about things like a patient calls and says they have abdominal pain consistent with an ectopic pregnancy, right? So there's a paid for appointment that happens by phone, but then the patient never comes in as they've been directed to do by the provider, right? So, and then the person does have an ectopic pregnancy and it goes badly. Is there a responsibility on the initial contacted provider, or what is their responsibility, right? To have ensured that the person was seen in person, right? I think those are the messy sorts of questions that will come up. I think standards of care are based on people's best thinking about what's ethical and what's reasonable. But I don't think anyone wants to vilify telehealth because it was a very needed avenue of extending healthcare to folks during the first peak of COVID. And I think we want to retain that capability. But as Chris was saying, there are real limitations to when it's appropriate and when it's not. And I don't think we have developed best practices yet about what is the best way to utilize telehealth in your practice, depending on your specialty, or with new patients versus existing patients, et cetera. So yes, the very long answer is yes. I think there will be litigation. And I know that providers are nervous. In New Hampshire, they have sought advisory opinions from the Attorney General's office about those similar sorts of questions. There's been lots of protections that have been built into these temporary waivers of flexibility, but providers are always nervous because it's been, reinforced with them how significant their responsibilities are to their patients. So we're getting a note from Jen Wheeler that says breakout rooms will close in 1 minute. So
I wanted to speak to that from a provider, if that's okay. I'll do it very briefly. I actually tell patients, if I'm doing a new patient evaluation, that this is going to be limited and it's just going to give us an idea on whether you should come in or not. I can't give you a full assessment. It's kind of like anytime I talk to anyone on the phone, I say I really can't give you a full assessment because I can't see what I'm looking at.
And the other side of that is for someone for whom coming in is a difficulty, like they have a stigmatized concern, like mental health or behavioral health, or some kind of privacy concern, a phone visit or an audio visit, a video visit can be just tremendously helpful. And so we do need to think about how this works for all of the different specialties, because I think that there may be some real benefit and existing durability for those behavioral health specialties compared to Chris's very hands-on specialty, in which to get the full value of his service, you do need to see him personally.
Agreed.
Okay, so our breakout room is closing in 20. Can everybody see that, or am I just reading what's blindingly obvious? Sorry.
Anyway.
Well, I was about to say thank you to Chris and Deborah. I really appreciate it, but now I'll mute myself. Oh,
Carol. Oh, Carol, I love you. Well, thank you, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you had some great discussions. I was in the workforce room, which is great. I know Shauna and Lynn from my Dover days, so it was really nice to catch up with you both as well, but we had a good discussion, so I hope the same happened in the other rooms. Again, I apologize we're not able to do 2 additional ones, but this was some great information that was provided to you this morning. Again, if there were any groups you didn't get to speak with, or you would like to just connect with somebody on this call today who presented, please reach out to me and I'm happy to make that virtual connection for you folks. I do want to thank again, Sean, Lynn, Josh, Mary, and Deborah and Chris for presenting today. Again, a lot of great information. These are really important topics in our region, and it was just so great to have these experts on to speak about where we're at as a region, given all the challenges that are out there right now. I also want to thank our sponsors again, St. Mary's Bank, Northeast Credit Union, and our series-long sponsor, Exeter Hospital. Couldn't put on these programs without your support, so thank you very much for supporting the Exeter Area Chamber of Commerce. And again, the staff of the Chamber, thank you for helping to pull this together and make this a great event this morning, and Exeter TV for live streaming this morning. With that, I will send you on your way. Be on the lookout for a follow-up email with some additional information on upcoming events and how to get in touch with me. And with that, I will leave you to go on with your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Kim.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Welcome, guys. Thank you.